How does a logical thinking autistic person like you end up in a cult underneath a abuser who uses an entire made up prophetic history to build a platform of millions of followers? How do you, Jono the Pollard, Jono, how do you end up in that? It doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound like you. Well, this is how. Yes, I was a right-wing extremist. Yes, I led an organization in Kansas City called Bound for Life. Yes, wheelchair, yes, awakening, yes, IHOP guy, yes, that's me. Lewingle, yep, hi. That's me. How did I end up in all that? This video is going to remain nameless. I'm not going to put locations. I'm not going to put people, because everyone's moved on, and this was 2003-ish, okay? So that's just that. Now, in 2002, I was the kid that you wasn't allowed to hang out with. If you were hanging out with me, you were doing very bad things. I mean, very bad things. I was wild. Very, very out there. Let me just say, your mama or your dada didn't let you date me. In 2003, now, I got hit with a flirt to convert straight into Pentecostalism. Now, context. My town, if you were an atheist, you were the oddball. My biology teacher in high school taught creationism alongside of evolution and told us that she thought evolution was nonsense. We had anywhere from 900 to 1,100 people in our town. Probably over 10% of our town was in our local church, and boy did it get weird. Invited to church, finally agreed to go to church. I walk into church stoned out of my head, and so this dude's preaching, and he's talking about heaven and hell and line in the sand and this and that, and I'm convinced, I'm freaking out, like, between the weed and the autism, I was on the altar freaking out. I was in a state of panic. So I joined this local Pentecostal church, seemingly normal youth group. Now, like any proper youth group of the early 2000s, we all kissed dating goodbye and burned all of our secular CDs. I'm not talking about burned as in like we burned them and passed them along to each other like everybody was doing. I mean, we threw them in a fire pit in a commitment never to let secular music touch our ears. Even though we did human videos to secular music like Bon Jovi and Non-Point and things like that. But anyway, that's besides the point. Now, when I got saved, the joke was that everybody else rushed in because Jesus was running out of blood. Now, I wasn't a heathen, I was a hellion, and if you from the South, you know the difference between those two terms. What I considered a fun Saturday night was seeing how fast I could get away from the police on my four-wheeler. I mean, that was a good time with some shine. So anyway, ADHD, back on track. This youth group, we start a ministry, and this ministry is a human video based ministry. If you don't know what human videos is, it's like interpretive dance. It's there's music playing, and we are doing all these motions to tell a story. And so, of course, as the big redhead, I was always Satan. But we ended up things kept getting more intense, and more rules were being introduced, and we were just like, this is just how it is. This is church. This is, all these Bible verses to back it up, and this is just part of it. So we ended up having to sign these like agreements as teenagers. No dating without permission, no secular music, you had to be at church, 3 out of the 4 Sundays, and that's morning and night, and Sunday morning, night, and Wednesday night. On top of, traveling every, 3 of 4 weekends a month with this human video drama. And when I say traveling, I mean from Kentucky to Michigan, type traveling. Like, we went on these huge trips. And what was driving this whole thing is that it was this idea of this is what our calling was. This is what we were meant to do. If we don't do this, God's going to curse us. And it was all backed up by these obscure, out of context at the time Bible verses that, it wasn't intentional. I'm not saying that any of this was intentional. I'm not mad or blaming anyone. I'm just telling a story. And so, we are in this pretty intense, kind of rigorous, cultish, if you look back on it without really knowing it, system. And so in the middle of all this, I guess dating goodbye is huge, and calling is being held over our heads. We're all trying to figure out what our calling is in life and what ministry we're going to do, and who the one is, and what that is there's one person in the world that you're supposed to marry and be with, and that if you don't find that one person, you're going to be outside of the will of God, and your marriage is going to be cursed, and all this, or your marriage will be a little bit blessed, but it won't be as perfect and as awesome and as anointed as it should be, and this and that. And people were having dreams about who was supposed to marry who, and this person was supposed to marry that person, and people were dating based off of this, and people were getting crazy ideas in their head based off of this, and it created a lot of chaos and a lot of hurt people. So similar to IHOPKC, just not on any kind of to that level. Immorality rips the place apart. I split because I have a cousin who's at this prayer ministry who pretty much has the same exact message. It's all driven on prophetic words. It's all driven on calling. It's all driven on prayer. I mean, literally prophecy was in the name of the church that I came out of. And so it had the same rules. It was the same system. And as an autistic person coming out of the Bible Belt, where even in school, evolution is a lie. It was just a natural fit. And so I went to Kansas City with 0 red flags or reservations and jumped in wholeheartedly. And so that's how I ended up in a cult in Kansas City. That's how I ended up with my Bickle. That's why I fit in so well there. I was already set up. I already thought that this was how church was. I never had experienced anything besides, the Baptist church my grandpa planted, and, that wasn't any kind of real experience. So, yeah. To give you a picture, I was afraid that if I missed church to cut the grass like I was supposed to, like a house chore, like a teenager, that I would go to hell or have to repent and do these fast or something to to make up for it. That's how rigorous this was. And so, do I feel like my teen years were stolen? Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. You will never hear me deny that I was all in all the time.